I'm Nicole Perez, 35 female. I live in a quiet suburban neighborhood in a house that I helped design with the man I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with. I'm a pharmacist, a job that requires precision, attention to detail, and a calm demeanor, qualities that I thought had served me well in my personal life, too. But as I would soon find out, I had missed the most critical warning signs in my own home, a miscalculation that would cost me everything I had worked for. Before this story unfolds, I'd love to connect with you. Please let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see how far these stories can travel. David and I had a plan, a meticulously crafted blueprint for our future. We met in our late 20s, two ambitious people who wanted the same things out of life: a successful career, a beautiful home, and eventually a family. He was an investment banker, charming and confident, the kind of man who could walk into any room and command attention. I was drawn to his drive, the way he spoke about our future as if it were a stock he was certain would only go up. For 8 years, we followed the plan. We both worked hard, climbing our respective career ladders. We saved diligently, pouring every spare dollar into a joint investment account that David managed. This was our dream house fund, he called it. He would show me the statements, the numbers climbing steadily, and I'd feel a sense of pride and security. We were a team building our empire together. I trusted him completely. Why wouldn't I? His entire career was built on trust and financial acumen. He handled our investments and I handled our day-to-day finances. It was a system that worked. Last year we finally found it. A beautiful plot of land with a view of the city skyline. It was more than we had planned to spend, but David was convincing. He showed me the projections, explaining how a custom-built home would be a far better investment in the long run. Think of it, Nicole, he'd said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. Every single detail exactly how we want it. This won't just be a house, it'll be our legacy. So we drained the dream house fund for the down payment and took out a construction loan. For the next 12 months, our lives revolved around the house. We spent weekends at tile stores and lighting showrooms. We had long discussions about open concept living spaces and kitchen backsplashes. I was the one who dealt with the contractors, who made sure the permits were in order, who spent her lunch breaks approving paint samples. David was busy with work, often flying out for conferences, but he was always the one who signed off on the big checks, transferring money from our main joint account to the builders. I saw the transactions, the large sums leaving our account, and felt the thrill of our dream taking shape. The house was finally finished 2 weeks ago. It was perfect. 4 bedrooms, a sprawling kitchen with a marble island, and a backyard with a patio that was perfect for entertaining. We spent the first week unpacking boxes, laughing as we remembered the stories behind old photographs and souvenirs. It felt like the culmination of everything we had worked for. We were finally home. The second week was when things started to feel off. David became distant, constantly on his phone, typing furiously. When I asked who he was texting, he'd wave it off as work stress. He said a big deal was closing and his investors were getting antsy. He started staying late at the office, sometimes not coming home until after I was asleep. I tried to be supportive, bringing him dinner at his desk, but he seemed irritated by my presence, shooing me away with a quick, dismissive kiss. I chalked it up to the pressure of his job and the financial stress of the new house. We had poured everything into it, and our accounts were lower than they had ever been. Once this deal closes, everything will be fine, he promised me one night, barely looking up from his laptop. We'll be more than fine, Nicole. You'll see, I chose to believe him. I had to. The last normal morning was a Tuesday. I woke up early, the sun just starting to stream through the floor-to-ceiling windows of our new bedroom. David's side of the bed was empty, but that wasn't unusual. He often went to the gym before work. I went downstairs, made coffee, and sat at the marble island, admiring how the light hit the new countertops. I felt a surge of happiness, a feeling of accomplishment. I did my usual morning routine: coffee, a quick check of my emails, and then a glance at our joint bank account to make sure the automatic mortgage payment had been scheduled correctly. I logged into the banking app, my thumb tapping the screen without a second thought, and then I froze. The screen loaded, and for a moment I thought it was a glitch. The balance read $127.34. I blinked, then refreshed the page. The same number stared back at me. $127.34. It was impossible. Just yesterday, there had been over $450,000 in that account. This was our life savings, the money we kept liquid for investments, for emergencies, for the final payment to the interior designer who had just finished the house. Panic clawed its way up my throat. I refreshed the page again and again, my heart pounding against my ribs. It had to be a mistake, a bank error. I navigated to the transaction history, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone, and there it was. A single wire transfer made at 2:17 a.m., an amount of $450,000 transferred to an account I didn't recognize. My first thought was that we had been hacked. I called David's phone, my breath coming in short, sharp gasps. It went straight to voicemail. David, call me back immediately. Something is wrong with the bank account. I think we've been robbed. I left a frantic, rambling message and tried again. Straight to voicemail, I tried his office. His assistant, a young woman who always sounded slightly bored, told me David hadn't come in yet. I spent the next hour on the phone with the bank's fraud department. The representative was calm and methodical, which only heightened my own hysteria. He asked me a series of security questions, then put me on hold. The silence stretched on, filled only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. When he came back on the line, his tone had changed. It was cooler, more formal. Ma'am, he said, we've reviewed the transaction. The transfer was initiated from a recognized device using the two-factor authentication code sent to the primary phone number on the account. My phone? I asked, confused. I didn't get any code. No, ma'am, he said slowly. The code was sent to Mr. Henderson's phone. As the primary account holder, he authorized the transfer. From our perspective, this is a legitimate transaction. The world tilted on its axis. No, I whispered, that can't be right, he wouldn't. But as I said the words, a cold, sickening dread began to seep into my bones. The late nights at the office, the secretive texts, the way he had been so distant, it wasn't work stress. It was something else. I hung up the phone, a strange numbness spreading through me. I walked through our perfect house, the house that was supposed to be our future, and all I could see was a movie set, a facade. None of it felt real. I sank onto the floor of the living room, surrounded by unpacked boxes, and I stared at the blank screen of my phone, waiting. For what I didn't know, an explanation, an apology, a sign that this was all a terrible, terrible nightmare. The text message arrived 3 hours later, 3 hours of me calling every person we knew trying to find David. His parents hadn't heard from him. His best friend thought he was on a business trip. No one knew anything. My panic had subsided into a hollow ache of dread. My phone buzzed on the floor beside me, the screen lighting up with a number I didn't recognize. It was a single message. Thanks for the house. It was the perfect way to cash out my half. I've moved on, Nicole. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce. Don't try to contact me. I read the message once, twice, 10 times. The words swam before my eyes, nonsensical and brutal. Cash out my half? What did that even mean? We had built this life together. Every dollar in that account was from both of our salaries, a product of our shared sacrifices. And then another message came through from the same number. It was a picture of David smiling with his arm around a woman, a younger woman with bright blonde hair and a dazzlingly white smile. They were on a beach, the turquoise water sparkling behind them. She was wearing a diamond ring on her left hand. It was a ring I had never seen before. Under the photo was a caption, "Meet Sophia, the future Mrs. Henderson." Sophia, the name was vaguely familiar. I scrolled through my recent contacts, my mind racing, and then I saw it, Sophia Miller, interior designer, the woman we had hired to furnish our dream home, the woman I had been meeting with for weeks, agonizing over fabric swatches and furniture layouts. The woman who had been in my house just last week, complimenting my taste and telling me how lucky I was to have a husband like David. The betrayal was so immense, so audacious, it almost didn't feel real. He hadn't just left me, he had planned this. He had used me, used our shared dreams to fund his new life with another woman, and he had used the very woman I had hired to help build our home to do it, the house. The $450,000, it was all connected. The numbness I had felt earlier was replaced by a white-hot rage. I looked around at the house, at the beautiful, expensive furniture Sophia had picked out, and I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't my home. It was a monument to my own stupidity. My first coherent thought was, Emily. Emily was my best friend since college, a razor-sharp divorce attorney who had always been a little suspicious of David's slick charm. I called her, my voice breaking as I tried to explain what had happened. "I'm on my way," she said, her voice firm and clear, cutting through my fog of despair. "Don't do anything, don't reply to him, don't call the police. Just sit tight, we need to be smart about this." When Emily arrived, she found me on the living room floor, still staring at the picture of David and Sophia. She took the phone from my hand, read the messages, and let out a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. Then she sat down next to me, took my hands in hers, and looked me straight in the eye. "Okay, Nicole," she said, her voice a mixture of fury and focus. "You can fall apart later. Right now, we need to go to war." Emily was a force of nature. Within hours, she had transformed my kitchen island into a command center. Her laptop was open, legal pads were spread out, and she was firing off emails and making phone calls with terrifying efficiency. "First things first," she said, handing me a mug of hot tea. "We need to understand exactly what he did. He can't just make $500,000 disappear without a trace." She was right. David was smart, but he was also arrogant. He believed he had planned the perfect financial escape, but he had underestimated me, and he had definitely underestimated Emily. Our first breakthrough came from the bank. While the customer service representatives couldn't stop the transfer, Emily's legal requests, filed with the urgency of a court order, got us access to the wire transfer details. The money had been sent to a holding company I'd never heard of, SJM Properties LLC. SJM, Emily mused, scribbling on her notepad. Sophia Jessica Miller? No, Sophia's last name is Miller. What's her middle name? I didn't know. A quick search of her design company's website gave us nothing, but a deeper dive into public records searching for business licenses gave us the answer. Sophia Jessica Miller, SJM Properties. It was her. The company had been registered just 3 months ago. He's been planning this for at least 3 months, I said, the words leaving a bitter taste in my mouth. All those times he was supposedly working late, he was setting this up. He was building his escape hatch while I was picking out grout colors. The next step was to figure out where the money went from there. Emily hired a forensic accountant, a quiet, meticulous man named Arthur who seemed to live for tracking down financial malfeasance. While Arthur dug into the digital paper trail, Emily and I focused on the house itself. He said, "Thanks for the house," Emily repeated, tapping her pen on the table. That was specific. It wasn't just about the money. It was about this property. We pulled up the property records. The deed was in both our names, which was a small relief. But as we looked through the mountain of paperwork from the construction, I noticed something odd. The final payments to the general contractor, the big ones David had handled, weren't paid from our joint account. They were paid from another account, one I had never seen before. This is where my pharmacist's eye for detail kicked in. I had copies of every invoice, every payment authorization. I started cross-referencing the dates and amounts. I realized David had been showing me inflated invoices. For example, the contractor would bill us $100,000, and David would show me the invoice, transfer that amount from our joint account into his personal account, but then only pay the contractor $80,000 from that separate account. He was skimming off the top of every major payment, pocketing the difference. Over the year of construction, he had siphoned off nearly $200,000. He wasn't just emptying our savings, I told Emily, my voice shaking with fury. He was stealing from us the whole time. He used the construction of our dream house to build his getaway fund. Arthur, the forensic accountant, confirmed it. He traced the money from our joint account to David's secret account, and then from that account to SJM Properties. But SJM Properties hadn't just received the stolen construction money and the $450,000 from our savings. It had also just purchased a property. When Arthur told us the address, I felt the air leave my lungs. It was a luxury condo on the beach. In the same town as the picture David had sent me, he hadn't just taken our money to run off with his mistress. He had used it to buy their love nest. But then Arthur found something else, something that made David's plan even more sinister. The day before he disappeared, David had taken out a massive line of credit against our new house. A home equity line of credit, or HELOC, for $500,000. Because we had so much equity in the home from our massive down payment, the bank had approved it instantly. The paperwork was signed by both of us. But I never signed that, I insisted, looking at the digital signature on the document. It was a perfect replica of my own. He had forged my signature. He had not only drained our savings and stolen from the construction fund, but he had also saddled me with a $500,000 debt against the house he had just given me. He hadn't just left me with no money, he had left me in a financial hole so deep I might never climb out. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. Emily looked at the forged signature, then looked at me. A slow, dangerous smile spread across her face. "He thinks he's so smart," she said softly. "But forging a signature on a federal loan document, that's not just a civil matter, Nicole, that's a felony." He just handed us the gun to shoot him with. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of hope. He had made a mistake, a big one. The next 2 weeks were a blur of calculated moves. Emily's strategy was twofold. First, we would hit him where it hurt, his finances and his reputation. Second, we would set a trap that he would be unable to resist walking into. Our first move was to freeze everything. Emily filed for an emergency court order to freeze all of David's known assets, including his personal bank accounts, his retirement funds, and most importantly, the assets of SJM Properties LLC. The order cited fraud, theft, and the forged HELOC document. Because of the sheer amount of evidence we had compiled, the fake invoices, the forensic accountant's report, the forged signature, the judge granted it without hesitation. This meant that the beach condo he had bought with Sophia was now a frozen asset. They couldn't sell it, they couldn't refinance it, and any money left in the SJM account was now locked away. We knew from the property records that they had paid in cash, so they were living in a multi-million-dollar condo with no access to the capital they had used to buy it. Simultaneously, I took the evidence of the forged signature to the authorities. Filing the police report was one of the hardest things I'd ever had to do. It made everything feel so final, so sorted, but as I laid out the documents for the detective, I felt a sense of empowerment. I was no longer the victim cowering on the floor. I was a woman taking back her life. The detective was sympathetic but pragmatic. White-collar crime can be slow to prosecute, he warned me. But bank fraud involving a forged signature is serious. We will investigate this. The final piece of our financial attack was David's job. He worked for a major, prestigious investment firm, a company that prided itself on its integrity. Emily drafted a carefully worded letter to the firm's compliance department. It didn't make wild accusations. It simply stated that Mr. Henderson was the subject of a major fraud investigation, attached the court order freezing his assets, and noted that his actions had exposed the firm to significant reputational risk. We knew that in the world of high finance, the mere suggestion of impropriety could be a career death sentence. They wouldn't wait for a conviction, they would act to protect themselves. With those pieces in motion, we moved on to the trap. We knew that David, for all his arrogance, was now in a bind. His money was frozen, and his new life with Sophia was likely not as idyllic as it was in that beach photo. The interior designer, who had likely been promised a life of luxury, was now living in a beautiful cage with a man who couldn't access his money. The pressure on them must have been immense. The trap was the house itself, our house. He had mockingly given it to me, but he had also secretly loaded it with debt. He assumed I would be forced to sell it at a loss, that I would be buried in legal fees and mortgage payments I couldn't afford. He wanted to see me ruined, so we gave him what he wanted, or so he would think. Emily listed the house for sale, but we listed it at a surprisingly low price, well below market value. It was a price that would guarantee a quick sale, but it would also mean I would walk away with almost nothing after paying off the legitimate mortgage and the fraudulent HELOC. We made sure the listing went up on all the major real estate websites with beautiful, professional photos. We knew he would be watching. His ego wouldn't let him look away. He would want to see the final nail in my coffin. And as we waited for him to take the bait, the first pieces of our counteroffensive began to land. The first call came from a number I didn't recognize. It was David. His voice was no longer the smooth, confident tone I remembered. It was tight, strained. "What the hell did you do, Nicole?" he snarled. "My accounts are frozen. The firm just put me on administrative leave." I had rehearsed this moment with Emily. I kept my voice calm and cold. "I have no idea what you're talking about, David. You told me your lawyer would be in touch. I'm just protecting my assets." "Protecting your assets? You've ruined me," he shouted. "And why are you selling the house for so cheap? You're just throwing money away?" And there it was, the bait. His greed was so predictable. He couldn't stand the thought of me losing his money. "I don't have a choice," I said, letting a slight tremor enter my voice. "With the HELOC you took out, I'm barely breaking even. I have to sell, and I have to sell fast before the bank forecloses." I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. A quick sale, a low price, an opportunity. "Don't sell it," he said, his tone shifting, becoming almost conspiratorial. "Not yet. Let me see if I can figure something out. We can't let all that equity just disappear." He was hooked. 2 days later, Emily got a call from a lawyer representing an anonymous buyer. The buyer was offering to purchase the house in cash for the full asking price. They wanted to close in a week. The offer was signed by a trustee for a blind trust, a common way for the wealthy to purchase property anonymously. But Emily, being Emily, did some digging. The law firm representing the trust was known for working with less than scrupulous clients. And the funding for the purchase was coming from an offshore account. It was David. He was trying to buy back the house at a discount, using money he had hidden offshore, money our forensic accountant hadn't been able to trace. He would buy the house through the trust. Then once the sale was final and the HELOC was paid off, he would own the house free and clear, having effectively laundered his stolen money and bought $1 million property for pennies on the dollar. It was a brilliant, sociopathic plan. The closing was scheduled for a Friday afternoon at a downtown title company. Emily and I arrived early along with two other gentlemen in suits. They were not lawyers. They were the detective I had filed the report with and his partner. We sat in the sterile conference room, the closing documents spread out on the large mahogany table. The buyer's representative was a slick young lawyer who refused to make eye contact. He was there to sign on behalf of the trust. Just as he was about to sign the final document, the conference room door opened, and in walked David. His ego was so massive, he couldn't resist coming to watch his final victory in person. He wanted to see my face as I signed away the house he had stolen from me. He walked in with a smug, triumphant smile on his face. The smile vanished when he saw the two detectives rise from their chairs. "David Henderson," one of them said, his voice flat, "you're under arrest for bank fraud and aggravated identity theft." David's face went white. He looked from the detectives to me, his eyes wide with disbelief. "Nicole, what is this?" I stood up, my hand steady, my voice clear. "It's over, David. You thought you could take everything from me, but you were just too greedy." The slick lawyer for the trust was already packing his briefcase, mumbling something about being unaware of any illegal activities. Sophia was nowhere to be seen. She had, it turned out, been the first one to crack, cooperating with the district attorney in exchange for immunity. She had given them access to all of David's offshore account information. As the detectives let a sputtering, handcuffed David out of the room, he shot me a look of pure hatred. "You'll regret this," he hissed. I just smiled. "No, David," I said. "You will." The aftermath was messy, but it was a mess of my own making, and that felt powerful. With David's offshore funds now seized by the authorities, and with Sophia's testimony, the criminal case against him was ironclad. He pleaded guilty to avoid a longer sentence and is now serving 3 to 5 years in a minimum security prison. His career in finance is over, his reputation is destroyed. The civil case was even more satisfying. The divorce was finalized quickly. The judge awarded me 100% of the value of the house, all of the seized funds from his offshore accounts, and a significant portion of his now liquidated retirement accounts as punitive damages. The fraudulent HELOC was nullified, and the bank was forced to write it off as a loss due to their lax security protocols in approving a forged document. I decided not to sell the house. In the beginning, it felt tainted, a monument to David's betrayal. But as the legal battles raged on, I started to see it differently. I had poured my heart and soul into this place. I had chosen every tile, every light fixture, every paint color. It was my dream before it was ours. And I wasn't going to let him take that from me too, so I stayed. I had a ceremony with Emily where we burned sage in every room to cleanse the bad juju, as she put it. I redecorated the master bedroom, replacing the heavy, masculine furniture David had insisted on with things that were light and airy and felt like me. Slowly, the house began to feel like a home again. My home, it's been a year now. Life is different, it's quieter, it's simpler. I still work at the pharmacy, finding comfort in the order and precision of my job. I have dinner with Emily once a week. I've started traveling, something David never wanted to do. I went to Italy last spring and ate my way through Rome. Sometimes I think about David and Sophia. I heard she moved back in with her parents, her design career in tatters. I don't feel anger anymore, not really. I just feel pity. They built their relationship on a foundation of lies and theft, and like any structure with a faulty foundation, it was bound to collapse. I, on the other hand, am building something new, something stronger, something that belongs only to me. My life isn't following a blueprint anymore. It's a work in progress, and I'm discovering that the most beautiful designs are the ones you create yourself one day at a time.